think that did it. YouTube.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, I'm not sharing anymore,
Yeah, you're
right?
not. No.
Okay.
I think that did it.
All right, I think we're live.
YouTube.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. Oh, I'm not sharing anymore,
Yeah,
right?
you're not. No.
Okay. Wait a minute.
I think that did it.
All right, I think we're live.
YouTube.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen. Oh, I'm not sharing anymore,
Yeah,
right?
you're not. I think you might just have to go on mute for a second. Or turn
All right,
the
I think we're
sound off
live.
on that one.
Say that
Let me
again.
stop sharing my screen. I think you might just have to turn the sound off
I
on
think
that
you might
one.
just have to go on mute for a second.
Or turn the sound off.
That again.
I think you might just have to turn the sound off.
That again.
I think you might just have to turn the sound off. Did you get it?
I mean, if I turn the sound off on the computer, I can't hear you.
Well, not on the computer, but on in the meeting, you just have to put the meeting on mute.
I mean, if I turn the sound off on the
Well, not on the computer, but on in the meeting, you just have to put the meeting on mute.
I mean, if I turn the sound off on the
Well, not on the computer, but in the meeting, you have to turn.
let's turn our sound off on both computers. Let me just call you and let's figure this out.
Okay, on my phone or Hey Dave,
Hey,
phone was the other room.
it's all right. So what do I need to do?
Okay, so basically you have to, because you have the meeting open right now on YouTube.
Okay,
Did that work?
I can't hear you now.
Oh no. Yeah, for some
All right, there we
reason.
go. I got you now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now we're live
All
officially.
right, awesome. Off to a professional start here.
Well, we knew the first time it's going to cause some trouble.
Right. Yeah, I'm all about just kind of diving in and figuring it out on the fly instead of trying to spend a bunch of time perfecting everything up front.
That makes sense. Should we start with some quick intros?
Sure.
All
So
right.
yeah, so I'm Dave Waring. I'm the founder of digitalbrainbase.com and excited to discuss here and hopefully build a great community of people who are interested in creating, controlling, and benefiting from their own digital brain.
All right. Thanks, Dave, for that intro. My name is Amish. Dave introduced me to the idea of digital brain base, and ever since then, I've always been really interested in the overall vision, the overall goal of what it is that it's trying to accomplish. So, really excited to be here. Let's start by understanding, digital brain base and what it is and how it kind of came to light. I'd love to get your thoughts on that idea.
Yeah, so I started following AI like a lot of people with ChatGPT and the first intro of that, and just being able to talk to a computer using natural language kind of blew my mind, still blows my mind. And so I've been a heavy user of ChatGPT almost since the beginning. And it pretty quickly became apparent to me that we're going to be using these AI systems for everything in the future. I think those of us that are kind of the early adopters of these systems are already using them constantly. And so that was number one. And then very quickly, after that, I'm like, well, as I use this system more, it's going to start to learn more about me, and I'm going to want to feed it more and more of my data and my personal data so it can give me more personalized answers. And it started to make me very uncomfortable that a company was going to own that information and private data about me, instead of me owning it myself. And I think a lot of people intuitively get that from what's happened with social media, over the past decade. But this has the potential to put that dynamic on steroids of, these big tech companies really, owning and controlling your digital freedom, basically. Um, and that really concerned me. So I started looking for other ways to own and control my own, build, own, and control my own AI system. And I wanted to build a community of other people that were interested in the same thing to hopefully create a movement, or at least participate there, because we're not creating this movement, but participate in the movement that's already happening to decentralize AI and make sure that it's the individual that owns and controls their digital life. I call it a digital brain, instead of a company. So that's sort of the genesis behind this idea.
Gotcha. And I think that it's so interesting, like just the fact that when you we go back to when you mentioned companies can own your personal data. I think that that's crazy. The fact that Facebook can use that personal data and then provide things like ads to you, but with ChatGPT, it's sort of like at some point on steroids because a lot of times you're using ChatGPT for almost everything. And it's not just you, but people in your family, your kids. And I mean, obviously, there are ways in which you can link all of your accounts together. And you get to a point where you can build so much more of a profile about a person just from their interactions.
Correct. And I think that there's all sorts of issues with that. There's the fact that, that company basically controls the intelligence. And we've seen, issues already arise around that in terms of Google's Gemini, showing a diverse representation of the founding fathers, who are, of course, not a diverse set of people. Um, you know, uh, um, I had an issue where I was working with an AI model, and it just out of nowhere started integrating environmental recommendations into my food diary. And, I'm all about diversity and I'm all about the environment, just like the next person. But even after asking several times to like not focus on that, like the AI model continued to focus on that. And when you sort of apply this across, all the different domains that we're going to be using these AIs for, you start to see the danger of having a centralized intelligence. But I think even more than that, it's the control that a company is going to have over you once you have fed that AI like ChatGPT all of your personal data. And once it learns all about you, it's going to be very difficult to move to a new AI system. And that's going to give them an immense amount of control. And even if you think right now the leadership of OpenAI and ChatGPT is perfectly fine, is not going to do anything with that. Well, what about 10 years from now? What about if they go public? What about if there's new leadership that comes into play? It's just, you don't want someone owning that private data about you. You want to maintain the ownership and control over that. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, who's going to benefit, right? So you brought up Facebook. Well, Facebook is worth over $1 trillion, and basically Facebook is making that money off of the content that the individual users of Facebook are providing it. And so if we just continue to feed our personal data to these big tech companies, then they're going to be the ones that benefit from us instead of us. So there's also an economic component of this where, whoever owns and controls the data is going to like benefit from that. And if we continue down the path of having corporations like OpenAI own and control that data, then we're going to continue down the path of wealth disparity and individuals missing out on what's going to be the biggest technological revolution ever. And that power and wealth is going to accrue to a small number of companies instead of the individual users that are creating all the value.
Got it. And I think that it's also important to think about it from, a different perspective as well. So what's the what's the downside of a company like OpenAI owning all of our data? So imagine someone's out there telling us that, look, I'm okay with OpenAI owning everything about me and knows all of my information. What's that downside?
Yeah, so this is another reason why I like to think about this as a digital brain because, when I started researching this, it was like I'm learning about LLMs, I'm learning about RAG, I'm learning about tokens, and like very quickly I just became even more confused than when I started, down this path. But once I just started thinking about these things, it's like, listen, this is a digital brain. It has storage, memory, it has retrieval and input, and it has intelligence, right? It's basically a digital brain, right? And so once I realized that, it made it very easy to answer questions like this from a high level because it's just like, would you want OpenAI owning and controlling your physical brain? Right. Well, you don't want them owning and controlling your digital brain either because whoever controls your brain, right, controls you. Right. And so do you want a company controlling you or do you want to control you? And for me, at least, I want to control me. And also, even beyond that, and this goes to the community portion of this, is like, I want to live in a world where everyone controls their own minds and not a small concentrated group of companies or governments or whatever is controlling everyone's intelligence.
Yeah, and I guess that's what's scary is the implication of this big company having all of this data about us, being able to control us in ways, and I guess through mediums like maybe through ads, right? Maybe it's showing us like products, maybe, but also using that information to follow some sort of rhetoric, right? Like we know that OpenAI has gone through multiple changes of leadership, even as of late. I think that there were only about one or two of the core founding team members that were remaining. What's to say that if it gets into a completely different domain where now it's like, okay, well, we have an agenda and we want to maybe push that agenda onto people. Like, how do we stop that? We can't really control how they train their chat GPT models. We don't know like what are all of the filters and everything that they apply there. We don't know what's the when they're fine tuning the models, like what information they're including and what information they're not including. And I think that that's what's really important is who decides what's going to be important or not. And I think
Uh-huh.
that that's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's so important in being able to own our own AI systems is we can choose to include or not include certain pieces of information. So with things like Open Web UI in our knowledge base, right, where we can include all of this and we can have the model interact with this piece of information because it's ours. It's we want to interact with this data. It's not that it's going to be completely privatized or anything like that. And I think that that's what's so important is the whole idea of democratizing AI.
100%. So there's like, especially because when you use a system like ChatGPT, like it's one answer, right? So you ask like, what is this fact, right? And that AI model gives you back an answer. And that's what we want, right? Because that's way better in most cases than having to like dig through and do a bunch of research and that type of stuff yourself. It's much more efficient if you know that and if you can know and trust that answer to just have the answer. But that creates that power dynamic that you're talking about where whoever controls that answer, which when you're using ChatGPT, it's OpenAI, is basically deciding what truth is. And so that's a problem from a control standpoint, but it's also just a problem from the standpoint of how truth is decided, right? When we look back on hundreds of years ago, the things that were considered conspiracy theories or misinformation was things like the earth is round, you know, so we don't know everything today, and things are gonna, we're gonna, the people 100 years from now are gonna look back on some of the things that we believe today, like we look back on 100 years ago or hundreds of years ago, and the things that people believed then. And so, how do you get to truth? And you get to it through intelligent discourse among multiple parties, right? And so, if we want to continue to progress and come to a consensus around truth, and the best consensus around truth, then we need multiple models and multiple opinions and multiple teams that are creating these models, et cetera, and feeding them. And that debate process that is, kind of the sand in the tumbler of truth, right? That polishes truth.
Yeah, speaking of truth, it's also important to consider how generations are now valuing AI. So obviously millennials are going to look at an answer from ChatGPT. They'll consider it, right? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. If it seems like, no, that doesn't seem too right, or that doesn't seem like it's the correct answer, they'll still go out, do the research, maybe try to figure out, maybe do a simple Google search to see where this article is from or something like that. Versus, I think a lot of the younger generations, especially when they're introduced to this world of AI systems, to them, they don't know how these AI systems are trained. And they might even just consider the whatever an AI system like ChatGPT tells them to be the actual ground truth. They might not even think or decide to go out and research that concept or phenomena further because, why would ChatGPT lie essentially? And I think that
Right.
that's the main difference is what I feel like, when we start evolving more as a society and start using a lot of these tools, it's important to understand like what the value of truth in that's coming out from these systems is considered depending on the generation that's using it.
Right. And if we have many different AI models to choose from, then in that case, you could say bias almost becomes a good thing because we want a diverse range of opinions from a diverse set of people, discussing and using, just like we have now. But if you only have one model, like if it's OpenAI or Google or someone that's wins the race and there's just one model, then that bias becomes a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like we had one of our subscribers mention something in the live chat. And
Awesome.
Tom had said that wouldn't that issue be solved once they would provide references? So I could judge by myself if their references and information are trustworthy, at least for me. And so, do you want to take that one or?
So I think maybe both of us. I think great question, and thanks for joining the live stream. Awesome, you're our first live stream participant, so welcome. And my answer to that would be okay. Right now, because a lot of the references were created in a period before large language models became popular, you have a lot of reference material, right? And so I do believe that that reference material is a potential solution to the issue that we're talking about, but not if there's no incentive for people to continue to create this reference material, then the reference material is going to be developed by the singular AI system as well. And so it's going to be kind of a self-fulfilling or a feedback loop that's broken. That's basically just the AI feeding itself, the reference material.
It kind of relates to that whole idea of the dead internet theory, where now it's like most of the content that's created online on the internet is just generated by some sort of an AI system. Where now you see a lot of the posts that are coming in, even on Reddit, you see a lot of the posts that are top of the homepage, and you look at those and you can evaluate them. And I think now I've gotten to a point where I've used ChatGPT enough for me to I'm not going to naively say that I can recognize AI written text all the time, but to a large extent, if I look at a piece of text, I'm like, no, that definitely looks AI written. That doesn't look like a human has written that text. And you can see that even being used quite a bit in research papers as well, where a lot of the introductions, especially in the science articles like from IEEE, I've seen a lot of these papers, especially like the intros, they're a lot of the times just AI written intros. Like, sure, the experiments and everything, I can't really comment on those, but a lot of the times you'll see the same sort of words being reused and words that people don't really use quite often in their regular vernacular. Um, and I think that that's the biggest thing is once you get to a point where the references are just simply referencing content that was written by the AI systems, then how trustworthy are those references? Um, I think that's also important because ChatGPT, when you ask it to search the web for an answer, it's not like it's searching, news sources or anything. Well, I haven't really tried it to ask it for only searching, relevant news sites or anything like that. But I think that's something that you'd want to consider as well as like maybe someone from Gen Z is not going to be out there asking ChatGPT to search online for or provide references, but only provide references of high quality.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to like those differing opinions and having different AI models, and in a decentralized AI world where the incentives, the money basically in this case, are not all accruing to one company, but like you can make money by really focusing on trying to develop an AI model that is not racist, right? But is truth seeking, right? That is, really focused on real-time news, and people, are feeding, that AI with maybe their glasses in the future or something like that, and they're incentivized to, okay, you're on scene, right, where this thing is happening, right? Go live, right, like we're doing now. It feeds a news AI model, and now you've got an incentive structure where you've got somebody, a citizen journalist, that's right there on, scene, that's streaming the facts, right to the AI model, right? But you got to have the incentive structure, for that, because if all the value accrues to a Facebook, for that, people aren't going to want to do it to the degree that they're going to do it otherwise to have these really true seek. This would be a case where you're really improving the quality of the news by having the citizen journalist there and incentivized to go live, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. We've spent a lot of time talking about why it's important to not send our data to OpenAI and why it's not the best thing or the solution for the future of society or humanity. Let's talk a little bit more in about digital brain base, right? We talked about what got you interested in starting up digital brain base, but let's start from the very beginnings, right? Like, what is digital brain base supposed to be?
So originally, the reason why I chose the name Digital Brain Base was because when I talk to people in person about this being like your physical brain, but in the digital world, people got that. And whenever I started talking about like LLMs and RAG, and it's just, people were like me when I started. It's just like no idea, right? So that's where the digital brain portion of this came in. And then base came in from two places. The first place is when I started out, I was working on creating a code base that was going to be open source that allowed you to create, control, and benefit from your own digital brain. So that's the first part of base. And the second part of base is I wanted a home base for people who are interested in collaborating around this and sort of get this philosophically and want to work on this, whether or not they were using the system that I was developing or not. So the first part of that, luckily for me, and I think for the world actually, I put on pause because as I started working on this, I found Open Web UI, which is another open source software community, and they were like miles ahead of where I was in terms of building this system, and seem very philosophically aligned with how I think about this and how I'd like to see the world develop. So I'm no longer working on the code base part of that, and I've kind of gone all in and even devoting some of the money that I was spending on that to sponsoring the Open Web UI community. But the home base part of this, is still true, and that's why I decided like I'm not going to change the name or anything, because I still want to have kind of a home base for people who are philosophically into this. And right now, I'd say there are a fair amount of communities, Open Web UI being one of them, that are really good if you're technical and want to get into the development side of this. But I really wanted a place where kind of anyone could come. Like developers are welcome too. But if I had to say like what's the core audience here, it's people that are technical enough to kind of understand what's happening here, but they're not developers and want, a little bit more of a this is a community that's focused on people trying to use this versus some people focused on people who are trying to build it.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important. I think I might have gone on mute accidentally, but I think it's also important to note that it's when we say that the target audience is technical, it's not necessary for them to be like coders or people who, are understand like all of the intricacies of like a computer or anything like that. It's more people who understand the basic in and outs of a computer, right? Like how to install software. Doesn't need to be too complex, right? But as long as you can really understand how or just have the passion or the drive to set up some of these tools, and I think that that's all you would need really.
Yeah, and I'm hoping in the future, like even like our parents and stuff, it'll be simple enough for them to do that. And it's getting easier and easier, quickly to do this. And I agree with you 100%. Like if you just really have the desire to get this set up, especially using the documentation on Open Web UI and our YouTube channel and the videos that you're putting out, you can do it. Like I think anyone can do it. You really don't have to have any significant technical expertise. You basically just have to know how to use a computer. But it is a little bit more than just installing a piece of software right now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think that we are at that state right now where we've tried a lot of solutions that would can go into like a one-click installation for things. It's still under process, right? We're still, trying it out, but I feel like in maybe a couple of weeks or months from now, we should be in that state where now we can, with just a click of a button, pretty much install OpenWeb UI, Olama, all of the tools that are necessary for running things locally.
Yeah, and I think, 100%. And then I think, we have to start looking at one of the difficulties of this is with most software, you just if you can install it, you can run it, right? And your experience really doesn't differ that much depending on the computer that you have. But as you know, with these local AI systems, the hardware that you're running them on gives you a hugely different experience and what you're able to do with those systems. But luckily, the small models are improving at such a rapid rate, and I think this is another advantage of potentially decentralizing AI is if you're using a model for a very specific use case, like you don't need it to have access to all of the world's information to be really good. And so I think that's one of the clear advantages that the open source AI community has over companies like OpenAI is we don't really need to develop the God model. Like we can really focus on these smaller models that pretty much anyone can run on their existing hardware. And as these computers and phones and everything improve, you'll just be able to run these anywhere you are and get very good, maybe even better, especially when they have access to your personal data in a private and secure manner that you're in ownership and control over. You're going to have a much better experience too.
Yeah, and I think that that's what I believe is so important is being able to run these models locally. And I think also did a video on that in the playlist on how or what sort of system, computational or hardware requirements you need to be able to run these models. Um, Yesterday I was doing a little bit of a demo on some of these really small models, like the small LM, SMOLL, and that one's only about 134 megabytes. It's a
Oh, wow.
really small model. Um, you don't need a GPU for that. You can run inference even on a CPU, right? You can run that inference on, even a Raspberry Pi, like a really small computer. And how is the performance? I'm not going to say it's better than ChatGPT 4.0 or o1 preview or anything like that, but to do some really basic things, it was quite useful. So, and I think what really needs to be emphasized is the fact that these are all early stage, right? These are all first draft iterations of these models. In the future, we're going to get to a point where these are going to keep improving over time. And if 135 megabits model can give us that good of a performance, then you can imagine a state where maybe 5 or even 10 years from now, all of these really large LLMs can actually be quantized to really fit even or to even be able to run on your phone. And I think that's where I can see the state of this sort of hardware and everything going into, where now you don't need to get like a $1,000 computer or a laptop to be able to run these models. Even like a $300 or $400 laptop is going to be able to run it. And then I can even envision like in the next 5 or 10 years where now you don't even need anything like that. You can even just run it on something like your phone. And
100%. I think
yeah.
it could happen even faster than that.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
it's just moving so quickly right now that, I mean, just take us for example. Like we're just trying to sort of like get people up and running on these systems, but I think one of the places where you and I want to go is, really helping people discover and train these smaller models on their data that they can run on right now pretty much the average laptop and in the future a phone. I know Tim, the founder of Open Web UI, with the leaderboard that he just released, it's in its early stages right now, but that's one of the things, that's kind of, I don't want to say missing from the open source community right now, but we haven't really gotten dialed in yet, is like, and especially if we're thinking about these things as like a personal digital brain, like there's a few main areas that like we all care about, like our health and our personal finances, that I feel like we can work together to really dial in some of these smaller models, to be really, really good and actually way better than the larger models on, the data that we want to make sure that we're keeping private and secure. And then if, we're asking like, you know, what's the population of Zimbabwe or something, like fine, like farm that out to ChatGPT to answer, because we don't care if that question is private or secure or anything like that.
Yeah, and t speaking about like hardware and those kind of things, something that I also shared in the live chat was the link to Grok, where Grok was really trying to. I was actually using something known as language processing units, right, where it basically just was able to speed up inference time by a significant amount. I like the fact that it's private. I don't like the fact that it's paid, but I use that API quite a bit and I never put my card in. And I've been using it for like the last month. I've used it for over, and this is just me throwing a guess, but over like 1,000 at least queries. And I've never had to pay like a single dollar for it. It's
Same.
significantly faster than any of the chat GPT. It was like insanely fast. And in terms of accuracy, it really good accuracy. Whatever task that I ask it to do, not only because sometimes I've seen chat GPT do this where I ask it to write some code, it would give me some code, but then it kind of gets lazy
Yeah.
where it's like giving me half the code and it says fill in the rest yourself and then gives me like the other half. It's like sometimes it'll give me like a function and then not give me the rest of the code. This will give you your entire code base completely from the start. Like, hey, do this entire thing from start to end. And then if I ask it to change something, rewrites the entire code base for me. It's a lot less lazy in that essence. Again, it's free for now, but I know that there's a paid option. I just don't know what the difference is. But
Yeah, I think and that's GROQ, not GROK, the X.
yeah, not to be confused with
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
between
But
the X
yeah, I
model.
use it all the time too. I actually just ran into a limit on it because I was doing so many transcriptions with the Whisper Turbo model. But yeah, I mean, with all the other models, I haven't run into any issue. And I think their thing is like they're trying to attract, enterprise users that are building the API into the app. And so they're kind of fine, like letting individuals use it. And there's just so much less activity coming from individuals that they can do that.
Oh,
And
we
yeah,
looks like sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, we had a message from someone in the live chat from Boop. Boop said, hey y'all, this is my new favorite AI channel. I'm trying to customize OpenWeb UI from a developer's perspective, so changing more than just the preset settings. Are there any walkthroughs for something like that? I'm a huge fan of Grok. Um, so first of all, thanks for that message, Boop. Like, we really appreciate you supporting this channel. We've been really trying to work hard on releasing all of the latest content that Open Web UI offers. Like sometimes I'll release a video and next day it's changed. Like next day there's like a new release of Open Web UI. It's like, no, now everything has changed and you need to re-release the video. But to answer your question, there are ways in which we can do this. One is to the use of pipelines. I'm not sure if you'd seen that video, but pipelines allow a lot more like customization where you can put in a lot of your custom code, make it do specific things. There's a video in the channel on a custom pipeline for YouTube. um, I think Dave, you were involved quite a bit with that. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? What do you think?
Yeah, so first off, I'm not a developer, so I'm working with people that are more technical than I am, and we have, Amish who's doing the YouTube walkthroughs, and then we have Beck, who is the developer that I was working on to build our own digital brain base before we decided to go all in on Open Web UI, and then I have Dave Jones, who's also a developer. So Beck is the developer that built the chat with YouTube pipeline. And yeah, it's the pipelines. I think there's two different things that you can do here because Open Web UI is open source and it's MIT licensed. Like you can always fork it and do whatever you want with it, which is amazing. And then the second thing is, like Amish was talking about, you can use the pipelines. I'll see if I can have Beck actually create a video. We have a video that shows how do you set up the chat with YouTube pipeline, but I'll see if I can get him to create a video of like how he built it, so that people can look at that and see if they want to use a pipeline, or if they want to actually fork the code base and build something completely custom.
Yeah, and also to add on to that, in digitalbrainbase.com, we talk about a lot of these things. So, if you create like just a small thread or something on there, I can take a look at it, Beck can look at it, we can really stir up like a discussion there, and that will help us, understand. Even for us, I've not tried to use a lot of the things like custom. So, Boop's example was that they wanted to trigger the voice recording feature with a Bluetooth peripheral.
Oh, that's
Uh,
definitely a pipeline thing. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm sure Beck would be able to comment on that. So I shared the link to digitalbrainbase.com. If you can make just a comment on that, we can definitely make, Beck can take a look at that. We can figure out how to set it up, using the pipeline. I can make a video on it.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's kind of how we're thinking about things, is like we want to put all of our tutorials out on YouTube, also organize them on Digital Brainbase. But I think like if you have like a question or a comment that's specifically on a video, just respond on YouTube if that's where you're watching the video. But if you have like a larger like discussion, like, hey, I'm trying to do this new thing, or, this is a perfect example of the type of thing that you can go over to digitalbrainbase.com, start a new thread. Right now we'll focus on it, but hopefully like the goal would be in the future is that we have a bunch of people that are developing on and using Open Web UI and other, open source tools as well, to collaborate and really all learn and grow together.
All right. I think that's it's the fact that we have this digital brain-based website that really has like it is this resource for all of these different types of not just things related to open web UI, but also things related to like democratizing AI, just having your own sort of private AI system. And it's not just like open web UI stuff that we're going to be putting into digital brain base. It's also about how we can fine tune our own models as well. And I think that that's something that, we've been talking about recently is how we can create our own AI model that's trained on a lot of our data, right? It's fine tuned on our data. It's very different from using techniques like RAG because, the first time when I read about RAG, it's really funny because I looked at it and I thought, wow, this is something really complicated. I have no idea what it means. There's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of sciencey stuff, but to be honest, all RAG is just a technique that we like to use where it retrieves a significant, just a chunk of text from a document. So all we would do is just provide it maybe like a Word document with a page. And all RAG is we retrieve the most relevant chunk that's related to the question. from that whatever Word document, and then it generates a response only looking at whatever that chunk, what the most relevant chunk is. So it's a really simple idea, and I think that just a lot of that kind of stuff is things that we'd like to talk about in Digital Brain Base as well, where we're not just going to be using techniques like RAG. We also want to train our own models such that it doesn't need to reference some sort of a database or a vector DB or anything like that. We want to make things very simple so that anyone, even people like you said that have no technical expertise or no experience with anything related to AI tools or services, they'll be able to just very simply and very easily set all of these things up. They'll also be able to fine tune their own models and then use those models to just interact with.
100%. Yeah. And Open Web UI is like, and the team there is like very aligned with that. And you can see it in terms of like how they've set up their RAG, on Open Web UI and like with this leaderboard thing, how they're going to allow you to fine tune models off of it. So, it's been a really great find. I mean, it really, I thought it was going to take like years to get to this point, and the fact that they're already there, and sure, there's more that they need to do or the community needs to do and they want to improve, but like I'd say that it's already like a really useful system that, like you said, is like probably not ready for our grandparents yet, but certainly like if you use computers on a daily basis is right now easy enough to get set up on and start using.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked a lot about digital brain base and how it's related to open web UI. And I think something else that we also want to reiterate is the fact that we're not just limited to using open web UI, right? Like we want to just be able to use all of these tools and services that allows us to do these things. So
Yeah, basically anyone who wants to give individuals ownership and control over their AI systems, like we want to collaborate with and we want you to be a part of this community. It's, Open Web UI is the main tool that we're focused on right now, but there's lots of ways to combine Open Web UI with other tools. There's other self-sovereign AI systems out there besides Open Web UI, and like it's everyone's welcome, that wants to, work to decentralize AI. And I guess we'd be happy to have people who don't want to do that come and debate us, but like we're really focused on, decentralizing AI and giving everyone the ownership and control over these systems themselves.
yeah, Boop had this message that they've been shaking their head yes for the last 15 minutes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely hop over into the forums. That's we've been focused on growing out the YouTube channel primarily, but we're going to start to work more on the forums and organizing that and hoping to get, a good core group of people who are aligned around this, having discussions there and working together to really take this to the next level. It's meant to be a group effort, and this group here is really just meant to kind of get the initial fire going that hopefully becomes a very big thing.
Sounds great. I know we've talked so much about what the current state of digital brain base is and what the current state of like and why we need to have a digital brain base. Can you tell us a little bit more about the future of digital brain base? Like where is your vision going and what that looks like in your head?
So, I believe that in the near future, meaning in the next few years, not the next few decades, that everyone will have their own digital brain, and it will be basically a digital extension of yourself. And we will rely on that to really make our lives better in every way. That any place where you can think, how would more intelligence make this better? We will use our digital brains to do that. So, in the future, if you're single, instead of spending a lot of time, right swiping or whatever, it's been a long time since I've been single, but whatever happens on dating platforms now, your digital brain will go and talk to other digital brains and find good matches. So that way, when you go out on a date, you'll be much more likely to connect with the person, because it'll be pre-vetted. getting a job. There'll be companies, the company owned digital brain will come and you'll send your digital brain to talk to that company. And before you have to go and waste a lot of time sending out resumes and sitting for interviews like we've all done on both sides that are a complete waste of time, you'll be connected to people that, there's at least a good degree of similarity with. Within companies, how much time are we spending sitting through meetings where like maybe 5% of the meeting is actually relevant to you? In the future, you'll send your digital brain to these meetings. So basically pretty much everything that you do now, um, these digital brains will enhance that, make it more efficient, and really just leverage your time like 100x. And this is the economy of the future. Like we all make our money off of our physical brains now, even if you're working with your hands. Like if you're a plumber, like that's a skilled trade. There's a lot of thought and intelligence that goes into that work. So we all make our money off of our knowledge and intelligence now, and that will be true in the future too. That's where the money will be made, and that's why it's important that we own and control that. So we're the ones that make the money. And I think the economy of the future is largely a network of these digital brains working together to do things. And this is where like agents come in. And when you think about how that's going to be when these AIs can go out and act on our behalf, again, you can just see the importance of us owning and controlling these systems. But the first component of that is getting people off of ChatGPT that they don't own and control and onto a system that they do own and control. And that's, what we're all about right now. And I think people are starting to like when I talk to people about this, even when the people that are not that technical, they really grasp like the importance of this, and want to get up and running on a system like Open Web UI. So I don't think we have an uphill battle in terms of convincing people of this. I think we just need to get the word out. And as we do that, we will, I think, very quickly have something that's a lot, should be able to show people. I think we can show people now something that is in many ways way better than ChatGPT already, and it's free. I mean, it's crazy, right? So, we can do that now. And I think the more people we get on this and the more communities and channels like this that we see, and people doing stuff like this, the faster we're going to move into that future where we own and control and benefit from it instead of some company like OpenAI.
Wow, there was like multiple million-dollar ideas in that response that you just have to unpack. Like this, the idea of sharing your digital brain to go into a meeting, come back with notes, and then just compiling those notes as action items, and then just having all of those list of action items from your digital brain going out, having meetings with all these different stakeholders coming back, and then you have like a list of things that people are talking about. And if you wanted to, for example, have your digital brain as your digital assistant, going out like figuring out, well, why does this action item matter, or like, can you give me a little bit more context to this? And then your digital brain is just like, okay, well, yeah, let me go reach out to the digital brain of the product manager, figure out like what is this action item, let me get some more info. And their digital brain is giving us the response, and it's like this crazy ecosystem where every single person has their digital brain. They're sort of communicating with each other, and if
Yeah,
we
and
can
you can
build.
build, like you're saying, like there's a whole economy that can be built on top of that. It's just the key is that the individual owns and controls their own digital brain, their own AI system. And then there's all these tools and everything that can be built on top of that where people can make tons of money. And that's the new economy and everything. But it's like that core piece needs to be owned and controlled by the individual. And it will be so much a larger of an economy than if it's a company like OpenAI that controls that. It will be, an explosion of economic growth on top of this that benefits everyone. And sure, we may not have a giant company that's worth like $20 trillion or something in the future, but like what we will have is even more value that's more equitably distributed across a wide variety of people that are creating the value. So like I'm totally pro market, totally pro capitalism. But what we have now is the big tech companies have kind of taken control of the playing field, and we're like playing on a playing field that's owned by a company, and that's not free market. You know what I mean? That's the opposite. So this is our opportunity. It's a new paradigm, and new paradigms like this create very unique opportunities to cross moats that were previously impossible to cross. Just like in the physical world, like when someone invented a boat, you know, that opened up, and exposed the previous power dynamics to a new way of doing things. And the same is true here, which is why it's important that we act quickly, because the window of opportunity will close if we don't act on it.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds, or that makes me think about a future video that I can do at some point, which is like that same scenario or the same use case, which to me, in my mind, is if that could happen, where I can have my brain go and talk to your brain without us ever interacting and just them both having a conversation with each other. I think that if there are ways in which we can set that up, maybe using a pipeline or something like that, I'm sure that we can figure out something. But if that's possible, and basically like my brain comes back and it can populate my knowledge base with things that the conversations that it has with you, to me I feel like that's the most ideal world. If that can happen, that changes everything. And I feel like, we're on this cusp of this. I feel like 6 months to a year of development, and we can really get there, and not just get there but also fine tune it to a point where it's almost like real-time interactions with our digital brains.
100%. Yeah, I think we need to start with like a few key use cases, and get those going as kind of like the template. And that'll take a bit, and that'll take a lot of work and a lot of trial and error and everything. But once you have it working for one thing, then you can just kind of stamp it out across all the other things. And people will be incentivized to do that because they'll be able to get a lot of value from it themselves, right? By having their digital brain talk to other digital brains and come back with really valuable things. And then there will be economies that are built on top of that, and people, being able to make money off of that.
That's a very ideal, perfect world.
That's what we're shooting for. I
All
think
right.
that's probably a great place to wrap it. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I hope that anyone who's watching this or participating now, first off, thank you for participating in this. We're definitely a grassroots movement, so the more you come to stuff like this, ask questions, comment, talk in the forums, comments on videos, all of that, the more that it progresses this movement. And we're all about collaborating with anyone who shares this philosophy of decentralizing AI and self-sovereign AI.
sounds great. Well, thank you so much, David, for giving us some background about digital brain base. It really helped to open up a lot of these ideas, and how we want to have these like open systems just for our own benefit and not share it with other companies. So I really appreciate you taking the time, talking us through some of these ideas. And if you were new to this channel, if you're just joining in for the first time, we're going to be doing a lot more of these. We really want to keep things open. We really want to have this sort of open discussions on future ideas, on current ideas, that things that we are working on, and how it relates to creating our own digital brain base. So thank you so much for tuning in. Like David said, if you found this video interesting, then please leave a like. If you are new to the channel, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It really helps the channel out. And you can comment on any future ideas or suggestions that you want us to address in future live sessions. If you want to compile some questions, head over to digitalbrainbase.com. We want to have that. We'll have a separate thread open just for live discussions that we can address in future live streams. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, we'll see you all in the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Amish.
All
Thanks,
right, bye bye.
everybody.